Howdy, howdy. Um, I was I was watching the stream and my brain didn't actually fully process the words, "We'll wait for the interviewer person." I was thinking, "Oh, he'll just message me at the time that we had already agreed upon."
No, I've duped you. I was actually referring to you the entire time.
Um, Also, I'm so sorry about the timing. I am very bad at math. It's because I'm gay.
Oh, that's fair, and I understand, and also same. You have nothing to worry about. Um, but yeah, hit me up. First of all, name and
Name
pronouns, and
pronouns.
right, we'll work from there.
Okay, hi, my name's Kate. I go by any pronouns, but she, they is usually what I default to. Doesn't really matter for me though. Um, I am an undergraduate in my senior year, and I'm going to be a super senior next year because someone is bad at not taking classes without having a mental breakdown.
Fun and
Um,
reasonable.
yeah, exactly. Um, I'm planning to actually do some undergraduate research, like an independent research study with one of my professors. I'm political science and philosophy. I um, and one of my philosophy professors, sorry, one of my political science professors. I'm a little bit nervous, so if I stutter or anything, that's
No
why.
worries at all, and
Um,
nothing to be concerned about.
well, thank you very much. She offered to be the mentor on this project, and I'm thinking of using this as like a writing sample, and also I'd like to publish it. I plan to go to grad school. Like I'd like to go on a PhD tract, all that good stuff.
Well, I hope to assist in any way that I can.
Awesome. Well, the project that I'm working on is, hmm, we're trying to figure out how likely it is that someone could engage with like this kind of moderate right-wing content and be moved over down that alt-right rabbit hole. So, how likely is it someone could be a Ben Shapiro fan one day and then a year later they're watching Nick Fuentes? Um,
This is a subject on which I have some degree of expertise. So yeah, I'm very happy to lend my
absolutely.
thoughts.
Well, thank you very much for your time and your contribution. So, the first question, what figures on the right should, or sorry, which figures on the right do you consider the most prominent?
Um, Well, statistically, I'm pretty sure Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens are some of the largest ones. In terms of the
Hmm.
online right. I mean, obviously, in terms of like political figures, Donald Trump is the current headpiece. But in terms of online engagement, you have those two. Tucker Carlson, obviously, is a massive broadcaster. I would argue that in some respects, Joe Rogan commands a pretty prominent right wing portion of his audience. Um, you have a Steven Crowder, though I think that he's kind of eclipsed by those other three to a pretty significant extent. I'm hearing an echo, by the way. Do you have headphones in?
I do have headphones in.
That is interesting. How could I be hearing myself then?
I don't know. Let me turn down the volume on my computer and see if sometimes they just feed back into themselves. Is this any better?
Hello, hello? I think that's better.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I'd say those are some of the largest figures, yeah.
Okay, cool. So of those figures, which ones do you think have like audiences that are the most primed for like further radicalization to the right?
Um, I would probably say, I would probably say Crowder. Um, oh God, honestly, I feel like all of them do. Um, in different ways. There are different avenues in which all of them are have audiences which I feel would be susceptible in that respect.
Gotcha. It is definitely a terrifying topic a little bit, just thinking about how someone could be watching an edgy comedian like Crowder, and then that leads them to thinking that Black people are bad, or I don't know, Jews run the world.
It's been known to happen. Um,
There are
oh,
such cases.
if I might ask, because I still hear an echo, I'm afraid. Would you mind
Oh,
just switching to push to talk? Sorry for the inconvenience.
no, it's okay. I'm going to turn you down first, and then I'm going to switch to push to talk. Give me just a second.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is this any better?
Well, yeah, if it's push to talk, then yeah, I won't be able to hear myself during an interview, so that's perfectly fine. My
Yeah, that's
apologies.
fair.
Audio stuff. It's always an audio thing, and it's every person I talk to. It's always some new thing.
Hmm.
Discord has different like input sensitivities for different mic types. It's dumb.
Right. I actually,
Uh, you let go of the push to talk key.
I'm so sorry.
No worries. You said
I had a friend. I had my friend help me with my audio today, just because I know you have an audio thing. Discord really hates you, dude.
Yeah, I'd say so. Maybe they're controlled by one of them alt-right groups, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
concerted effort to undermine me specifically.
so another aspect of this study is we're not just asking about figures, we're also asking about like memes, symbols, stuff like that. Are there any prominent ones that I should be aware of aside from like, I don't know, the Groiper?
Well, Pepe the Frog was like the predominant alt-right symbol for a good long time. But it's kind of been reclaimed now. I see it used all over the place. I don't think it has the punch that it used to, which is definitely a good thing.
I
Um,
completely agree.
you have that. There is let me think. Well, there's all the QAnon aligned stuff, but that's not really ambiguous. I don't really think there are any
Hmm.
QAnon dog whistles that have just kind of been integrated into mainstream discourse. Um, I
Hmm.
would say that at the moment, the line between the alt right and the rest of the internet is more clear now than it has been ever before, which is definitely a good thing.
I agree. It makes it a lot easier to figure out where these people are, especially since, like, in 2016, they were so thoroughly integrated into our internet society that it was like, is this an alt-righter or are they just like a misogynistic asshole?
Yeah, the effectiveness of the dog whistles can only really last for so long. Eventually, they're either going to be exposed or, more effectively, I think, co-opted. Nothing irritates far-right
Hmm.
people more than their symbols being like co-opted and used by normies. They despise it. You can see it on their forums. They get so angry, and it's very, very, very funny. Like they hate, for example, they really hate the fact that based is a commonly used term, pretty much everywhere now, which is very, very funny. Because it robs them of the ability to distinguish in and out groups. It's no longer an entry point. It's no longer a way of hooking people with the utility of a phrase and then getting them involved with all of the associated, dog whistles and political affiliations.
Hmm.
It's just a term that people use. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Uh, so sorry, my thoughts are a little bit scattered.
You have nothing to
Uh,
apologize about.
I'd
It,
also like to ask about like de-radicalization. Which left-wing figures do you think are the most prominent for that? I'd like to include them as sort of distractor questions.
Um, well, ContraPoints is the one given the most credit for it. I think she got a New York Times article, which is, a pretty large degree of prominence for that particular subject. Um, I think, I think for the most part, the people who are going to be most effective at de-radicalization are the people who can produce content which is interesting and informative, even if you're not already part of the left-wing bubble. ContraPoints is a
Right.
very high-quality YouTuber. The quality of the content that she produces is fantastic, and I think that just means there's a
Hmm.
general appeal. She's willing to engage with edgy topics, use edgy language. She doesn't come off as some kind of like cringy outsider who's appropriating these discussions for clicks or views, and that's good. I think H-Bomb is pretty good at it as well, H-Bomber guy, because he does
Mm-hmm.
media reviews, and everyone consumes media. And, you know, if
Right.
you're, whether you're alt-right or left-leaning, if you want, you know, to watch a cool video on Fallout New Vegas or whatever, it's a good avenue for introduction. I would say, if
Mm-hmm.
anything, the people best at de-radicalizing are the people who make the best use of the diversity of tactics principle. The idea that the best way to succeed in a political sphere is to go beyond just explicit advocacy for your position to to instead focus on appealing to people
Mm-hmm.
through a number of mediums and through a number of topics.
Absolutely. And that kind of answers my next question, which was about the best way to de-radicalize someone. But using that diversity of tactics principle, I completely agree.
It's really really good. You know, people who are in the far right aren't going to click on a video from an obviously left leaning person and go like, all right, maybe I will learn about toxic masculinity. Like they're just not going to. Why would they? It wouldn't even be fun for them. I don't do it for them.
Right.
Like I don't go online and think like you know, let me today let's get the perspective of a alt-righter on this complicated gender issue. Why would I do that? That sounds dumb. But if I'm looking for like a video, some kind of anime review or whatever, I know that if a person who's alt-right made a video talking about like Fooly Cooly or Evangelion or something, it'd be way more effective at getting me into
Mm-hmm.
their content, if nothing else.
Yeah, I completely agree. Most of what I consume now, aside from watching your streams, is media reviews. I don't watch a lot of YouTube anymore just because I don't have the time as much, but media reviews have always been something I've been super into, so I can completely agree there.
Yeah, comedy is another big avenue. The you know, a ton of far right people online today are failed comedians, or they hide behind comedy as a way of presenting their opinions.
Absolutely.
And the aesthetic of being like the, you know, devil may care, you know, edgy comedian who's willing to say anything, that's it's a really effective way of getting people interested in what you have to say, because it gives you plausible deniability, and
Hmm.
that way if you're attacked you can frame it as people attacking, you know, your edgy free spirit, which is, you know, it just comes across as bad optically.
Yeah, you're completely right. I mean, the right is getting better at comedy is maybe one of the funniest lines I've ever heard in my life. I've never met a right winger who was funny. Have you?
No, though I have met a lot of right wingers who use comedy for political purposes. They definitely do that more aggressively than left
Yeah,
leaning people do. Right leaning people are just better at, you know, not sounding preachy. If you're to ignore the
exactly.
moral worth of these statements, you know, left leaning people will go on Twitter all the time and make explicit declarative statements about their political positions with a moral impetus involved, you know? I'm tired of society not standing up for trans women, yada yada, which, I mean, I agree with it.
Hmm.
But relatively uncommon are posts from conservatives going up there and we need to stop accepting black people into our institutions. Like that, even though there are a lot of people who kind of feel that way, like that degree of explicit preachy out there, like they work around it. They dog whistle. They you know, they obfuscate, and comedy is just such an effective way of getting people on board with that. It's so
Hmm.
so useful.
I had this conversation with actually the professor who's mentoring me on this project. The right tends to be better at using like certain manipulation tactics because their ideas are just less palatable. They need to dress them up. And I guess as leftists, we kind of get up all in our own heads and assume that because we're right, that everybody's going to see it that way and that we don't need to change how we deliver information.
Yeah, it's a an ineffective and regressive mindset that I strongly disagree with. We should be as aggressive, if not more aggressive, in our willingness to pursue different avenues for delivering our talking points, as long as it doesn't
Hmm.
involve dishonesty. I don't think we need to be dishonest.
Right. There's no reason for us to lie.
Yeah.
How many people come to you and say that you have been part of their de-radicalization? I'm trying to get like a grasp on how many people have like gone through this alt-right radicalization and how effective it is to have, online media entities who are part of that de-radicalization network.
I could not count the number of people. A large, large number of people. It
So a very high frequency.
it happens every single day in emails and chat.
Hmm.
I could not possibly make an effort to count. It is a very frequent thing that I hear.
That makes sense. And I'm not saying I've ever been like radicalized to the right, but you definitely did move me to the actual left, away from like being a sock dem. So,
My
uh,
pleasure. There was a poll just done in my website chat, by the way, of which 1/3 of the respondents claimed that they had been de-radicalized by me. If you were to
that's
extrapolate
awesome.
that to the size of my channel, that's probably a very large number of people.
I would assume so. It would be great if I could actually do like some formal polling on your audience, but that would be kind of complicated. So,
It definitely would be.
um, yeah. How frequently, sorry, I just read my own question again. What terms do alt-righters tend to refer to themselves with? Like, what are their common dog whistles now? I know that Nick Fuentes was like calling himself a tradcath, and there was like was it Christian nationalism? I
That's a
can't
common
remember at
one.
this point.
Yeah, they're constantly alternating between talking points. I don't know, tradcon, Christian nationalist, paleo-conservative, true conservative, original conservative, originalist conservative, paleocon, paleo-conservative. I mean, they'll jump between a million. Like, these people are largely Nazis. That's the most accurate,
Right.
consistent description of their political beliefs. But they'll alternate between like a million euphemisms, mostly because it's politically expedient to obfuscate what it is they actually believe.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, to their credit, that is true. It is definitely, um, it is it is definitely to their political benefit to avoid being explicit and honest. Yeah, it's you deal with all the obfuscations, and it can definitely get
Right.
frustrating, I think. But as long as you're familiar with the underlying talking points, you know where people are coming from.
Absolutely. And bringing all of this into academic literature is I'm hoping to make this more evident to like the quote unquote normies, just people who are not super engaged in online culture and debate, because they're bound to come across these people at some point in their lives. Like they have to go outside eventually, right?
Eventually, depends. A lot of types out there.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm sure there's quite a few alt-righters that just like live exclusively in a basement and then make like leftists live in their mother's basement jokes.
Yeah, well, it's I think a lot of it is really just the idea that there's no way for them to safely leave their own communities. A pretty common practice
That too.
in far right communities is, people um they realize they'll never be able to make like normal friends again, basically, because they're so like socially fucked. Their positions are so out there now that they have no choice but to
Hmm.
stick with their, these people. And what's more, uh oftentimes they'll collect information on one another in a sort of paranoid, oh, you're a fed type way. And um the concern is that if you leave, then out of spite they'll hound you. And there are actually cases of like Nazi groups that'll kill people who have left their own org. I think a lighter version of that is present in a lot of these online forums too, where it's like,
Hmm.
hey, if you go out there and try to live a normal life, you're kind of betraying the group, and we can ruin your life if we make it known what you believe or used to believe. So people stick where they are. And it's one of the reasons why I'm a big advocate for the idea
Yeah.
of providing a space where people can hang out and listen, even if they're like just off being an alt-righter. Because if there's no other step for them to land on, they'll stay where they are.
I guess that brings me to another question. Should we, in cases where like they're not necessarily doing anything harmful, but they are espousing like harmful views, should we continue to allow them to be on like Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, or should do you think it would be more efficient if we just said, fuck it, get rid of all of them? They're posting dumb shit. Because personally, I think that like when you cast these people off to their deepest corners of the internet, they'll just continue to remain in that echo chamber.
Well, I'm okay with social media sites having terms of service if people are like posting hate speech or doing harassment or whatever. As like a
Right, right.
rule
But like
though,
aside from that,
right, if we're ignoring I guess the policy issue and more like ethically like what's the best way forward, I think you can make a strong argument for deplatforming larger figures. Because them being
hmm
deplatformed is very rarely to their benefit. But in terms of like trying to expunge all of a given political group from social media, it seems like an exercise in futility. Whether you like it or not, like anyone
yeah.
can make a burner account, anyone can make like a second, a third, a fourth. Like it's not hard to do. Anyone can do it. And trying to fight against that, it feels like trying to like stem the tide of a river with a bucket. The best strategy, I think, is to have a way of redirecting that energy or that flow, you know, to acknowledge and
hmm
accommodate their existence in a way that maximizes our political outcomes.
Yeah, I can completely get behind that. Especially with like the banning large figures angle. I don't give a shit about those guys. They're never going to be moved. And if they don't genuinely hold those positions, then they're doing even more harm, in my opinion, because like they're disingenuously promoting something making the world worse. So, you
Yeah,
know.
and invariably, like a lot of these people just end up banning the regular rules anyway, right? Like it's, you know, and
Right.
special exceptions don't really have to be made. That's one of the things that makes it really difficult to be like conservative on social media sometimes. They just tend to do bigotry more often, obviously. So if that's like, you know, people say like, oh, our terms, you know, Twitter doesn't bias against conservatives. It biases against people who do racism. Well, that is bias against conservatives. It's just good, you know. But
Yeah,
conservatives can't.
exactly.
They can't admit to that without owning the fact that racism is part of their ideology. So it's one
hmm
of those situations where like they know and we know they know and we know as well, but they can't say anything about it. So yeah, we're in a non-biased fashion banning racism. Like, let's go.
Absolutely. And honestly, if they break the terms of service, they're being little shitheads, you know, they're doing their hate speech and harassment. Good riddance. Get them
Little
off of the
goofballs,
fucking
yeah.
classroom.
If they're being
Well,
little
I
goobers.
know why. Yes, the little goober aspect of the conservatives. So what is the most important thing to focus on when we're studying like how right-wing media spreads? Is there maybe like some specific nuance to it or
Like on what it would depend platform by platform and from what position you're in. You mean if you're a content creator yourself, or if you're just like a regular viewer?
I mean more like people who consume the content and that in general. I'm sorry, it's a very poorly worded question. What I mean is like, do right-wing content producers have some special way of disseminating their content, or is there some unique way that like people engaging with right-wing content go further down the rabbit hole?
Well, the diversity of tactics is essential, but I also feel like a lot of it is their willingness to disingenuously front their opinions in basically all spaces as a way of concern trolling for their position. So, for example, the explicit, I shouldn't say explicit, the real position that a lot of conservatives have about trans people is that they're degenerates and should be in the closet or they should die. That's like a lot of conservatives, they believe that. They believe that for about gay people, like explicitly up until the 80s, and a lot of them still do today. Like the idea they don't think that way about trans people is just not true. Of course they do. But instead of just openly saying that, they'll go around communities, you know, being
hmm
like, oh, well, aren't you concerned about fairness in women's sports? You know, don't you think this? Don't you think that? Now, when they do this stuff, they're being disingenuous. But if you strip away the
hmm
dishonesty, the real thing they're doing is taking their political position and advocating for it with subtle, or at least relatively subtle, and less disagreeable arguments that proxy the real position they have. And this, I
hmm
think, honestly, is something that we could learn from, you know? So, like lefties online, if you're a person who consumes content and you use Twitter from time to time and you have these conversations, I feel like some good could be done about not just fronting your pro minimum wage argument as like all caps $20 minimum wage now. Say that's a good argument. And you know what? Maybe it is. So, but like, say that's the position you hold. Maybe instead you should be asking questions like, why do you think it's acceptable for a bunch of Americans to starve while billionaires make record profits? That was a pretty common
Hmm.
thing that Bernie would push for as well. You know, the way in which you push for your argument is essential. Finding a way to make it more agreeable to others is essential. And a lot of lefties are so desperate to be seen as the one with like the best position, the one with the wokest position, like, you know, affirmatively, like how far left are you, that they ignore more productive avenues for discourse. The only place where you see that in on the far right is like in the far right. Usually you have to be really deep down the alt-right rabbit hole for conservatives to be at the point where they're
Hmm.
competing to be how like the most racist they can be. Like that's usually something you only see in like the most conservative elements of social media, but people on the left will do it at every level. Like just regular lefties will be like trying to virtue signal, which is just weird. We give up advocacy and effectiveness there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is just disappointing to see that conservatives tend to have like this better adaptation to a diversity of tactics than we do. Um, that's why I sincerely think that your content has changed the way that the online left engages with not just people on the right, but also maybe even liberals, people out in the real world, like just offline. It's refreshing to see, I guess.
Yeah, well, if nothing else, I've given people new and unique ways to hate a person. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
if nothing else, you know, the discourse has been significant. Even if people on the online left strongly dislike me, I would hope that my position and my behavior here would reaffirm to many of
Hmm.
them, at least to many of my viewers, that it's possible to be left-leaning and to be very strong and confident about those positions, and also to be
Right.
strategic in how one advocates for them.
Yeah, and that's good to see. So I'm only familiar with like Twitter and YouTube, and I know that you are also a fellow millennial boomer, so you don't like venture into the land of TikTok very often. But do you think with how like TikTok's super targeted algorithm works and like I guess just the sheer amount of time a lot of people spend on TikTok, should I also be looking into political figures on TikTok to see if they've been engaging with like this right-wing content over
Yeah,
there?
100%. I feel like in a way TikTok represents like the conclusion, or at least closer to a conclusion, of the content, like the algorithm content targeting. Because on YouTube, like on first of all on Twitter, whether you like it or not, you're probably going to see people you disagree with. Like you have to make an effort to
Right.
avoid them. On YouTube, the way YouTube recommendations work on the front page, you're usually going to see stuff kind of broadly in your category. On TikTok, that's not the case. On TikTok, you like if you want to, you can create a bubble, and TikTok will go,
Hmm.
yes, a bubble is what you want, a bubble is what we'll give you, and they will just make the biggest echo chamber in the world for you to just stick your head in
Hmm.
and never move from. And as a product of that, it's also a product of the medium, because the way TikTok videos are formatted and the way the culture of TikTok has developed, there's definitely like very little room for nuance. You know, they're shorter videos. I mean, you know, like Twitter also doesn't leave
Right.
much room for nuance, but it's, I mean, people can make Twitter threads if they want to. And also, people don't tend to use Twitter for um I feel like people don't get their political opinions from Twitter. People use Twitter to find other people with their political opinions and have fun with it. They tend to get their political opinions on
Yeah.
like YouTube or in real life, and Twitter is a place to reinforce them and to find social spaces within them. YouTube people find their political opinions there because, of course, you know, it's YouTube. TikTok, I think people do
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah, and this is also really interesting in regards to media effects theory and political socialization research. It's in the age of the internet where we are online so often and we are engaging politically online. I really do think that the primary socializers are going to shift. Um,
To
but that's
the
just,
Zoomer Hype Squad TikTok users?
yeah, exactly. Or, YouTube, just because I almost feel like I know a lot of people. Well, maybe not me personally. I've met a lot of people in my university who are like freshmen. They are pure Zoomer, you know? They're like little 18-year-olds, and I realize I'm not that much older than them, but it feels like an entirely different world over there. They're talking about how they saw TikToks about the Supreme Court um, Senate confirmation hearings, and I'm almost a little bit bewildered that they're getting all this information from their TikTok.
Yeah, it's pretty weird to think about. I do think that TikTok is an inherently inferior medium for political education, because there's just the way that app is developed is just not, it just does not encourage nuance. You know, I know YouTube has its problems and all, but I feel like TikTok has all those problems plus a few more. Um,
Hmm.
and it feeds so much into like your immediate like dopamine addiction, next video, keep scrolling, that you just sort of
Right.
mindlessly consume stuff in a way that isn't
Hmm.
the case in YouTube videos in quite the same way. Um, which can be an issue, yeah. It seems like the political space is going to move more and more towards dogmatism with time, which I'm concerned about. But if that's to
Yeah.
be the way things pan out, I want that dogmatism to be on our side, like, you know, to our favor as much as possible.
Yeah, it almost feels like a little bit of an inverse of like 2014 to 2016. Um, that's when I started to like engage online politically, and I came into like the Gamergate space. If anybody knows who Internet Aristocrat is, he's like a Nazi now. But he used to make like anti-SJW videos. I watched that shit, and if I had kept watching that shit, I might have come across as Nazi content, and that's mortifying. But I guess right now, what we're seeing is a lot of people on TikTok who are engaging with like lefty content, but it's you definitely made a point about this earlier in stream, and I'm trying to remember how you phrased it, but you said that you don't want people to just be like morally lucky. That's kind of what I'm thinking about right now. I don't want people to just be leftists because they're leftists. I want them to consider their perspectives and be leftists because we have the best arguments, you know?
Yeah, like, yeah, ideally you would always want it to be something that develops organically from a person's positions. The goal would be that you could give a person a set of tools for analyzing problems, and then after doing so, you could give them any
Mhm.
information on any situation, no matter how hypothetical, and they could use those tools to always arrive at like the correct position. Obviously, it's never
Absolutely.
that simple in practice, but that's kind of like the philosophical goal. You do the best you can within that.
You gotta start teaching them when they're young, you know? Like, encourage more critical thinking in just K through 12.
Oh yeah, just critical thinking would be all you really need. Critical thinking, basic sociological analysis. You don't want or need to teach them, like young people, I mean, any specific political bias, because again, like,
Right.
it wouldn't be good to have people who are left leaning just because they've been told to be left leaning. You know, I guess
Hmm.
it's the difference between telling a kid like you have to be nice to gay people and telling a kid, you know, a person's sexuality and romantic interests shouldn't change how you treat them. It because
Right.
the former is dogmatism, the latter is an ethical stance that can be applied broadly in the future and is more useful and more informative.
Yeah, exactly. I think I ended up actually on that anti-SJW like side of YouTube because I had already formed like the ethical stance you shouldn't treat someone differently based on their race, gender, or sexuality. Like I had already agreed with the left-wing position. However, the way that the arguments were being framed, it's like, oh, they're being discriminatory towards white people in the sense that they're saying, I don't know, the fucking white people dreads argument, or something else along those lines. You
No,
you
yeah,
get what I'm saying?
you weaponize that logic. A huge part of the early
Exactly.
Gamergate arguments were an attempt at pointing out perceived hypocrisy on the part of feminists and what have you, by saying that they're doing a bad job of representing the values that they claim to hold that you actually have.
Right.
I remember Sargon of Akkad used to, like he was a classical liberal and an egalitarian, and his concern was that modern feminists were crazy, and they were actually all man hating. And don't get me wrong, there are man-hating feminists and all. Most of them are TERFs, so there's that. But and of course,
True.
Carl likes TERFs. But the in terms of
Good old Carl gone.
well, right, in terms of how to properly like weaponize arguments, use the logic the other person already has, work within it, and we can do this too. By the way, when you're arguing with conservatives, like you should be arguing from the values you already know they at least claim to hold. If you're arguing, argue for small government values when you're talking about the need to prevent conservative policies from having the government police like people in their bedrooms. Argue in favor of building strong families when you talk about welfare programs. Talk about stuff like
Right.
national defense when you talk about like green energy because it provides energy independence. Use the values you know they already have to lead you to your solutions.
Absolutely. And I kind of learned how to do that from watching your content.
Thank you.
Um, I actually one of my roommates who's watching now, I've been able to like provide uh, better political information for her, because I now understand better how to like share my ideals and like explain concepts in a way that's like not going to raise any red flags or make me sound dogmatic, which is definitely not what I want to do, you know?
Right, right. Well, you never want to sound dogmatic. You should always sound like you're capable of at least hearing out what other people have to say, or understanding the reasons why they've arrived at their conclusions. Because if you can't do that, there's not really any reason for them to try with you. You've the moment you indicate either explicitly or implicitly that your position cannot be changed, you remove from them
Hmm.
any reason to have their position be changed by you.
Yeah, exactly. My mother is a conservative, and I struggle with this with her all the time. So I've been there. It's rough. It's funny. She actually thinks that I'm the one who's like immovable when my political positions have changed drastically over the last like 4 years.
It's often a projection, right? Oftentimes people will accuse you of not listening or not being interested in what they have to say or of being stubborn when you just don't think their reasoning is very good. I've been told that from people who have not actually presented any arguments at all, which is always a little frustrating. It's like, you do have to make some effort before I'll change my mind.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you give a half-assed argument, who's going to be convinced by that? That's just pathetic.
Yeah, or no argument at all. A lot of
That
people on the
too.
left seem to have given up on the concept of making an argument. I think a lot of them feel like it's beneath them because their positions are already correct, and by making an argument, they have to engage in all of these like laborious processes of listening and hearing and responding and what have you to people whose positions are just so self-evidently incorrect. And I understand that frustration, but this is
Hmm.
also like basically a suicide pact. Politics is
Yeah.
frustrating. You can't like you can't decide that the entire politics of process or the entire process of politics, my apologies, is beneath you because it's tedious or frustrating or because other people are so self-evidently wrong. We would never get anywhere with that.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to address chat really quick. I'm not watching chat right now, but my roommates are. And it's funny. The roommate I was referring to is straight. She's the only straight person I know, I swear to God. And I saw whoever made the "and they were roommates" comment. I just wanted to let you know that you are appreciated and I love you. Um,
Don't worry, I also don't know any straight people.
they're so hard to find these days.
Yeah,
The
truly a
token
dying
straighty.
breed.
I mean, I guess you do know one straight person, Evil Vaush, who accidentally gets called straight all the time.
Right, right, yes. The extremely heterosexual person um, who sometimes takes control of my stream when I'm not looking.
The ultra straight, super misogynistic, Vaush, our greatest enemy, truly. He's the one trying to break down the fortress.
Only look the same, so you never know who you're talking to. It really is good having
Exactly.
the evil twin you can pin everything else on. Um, sorry, I forgot to say something earlier with regards to politics. In terms of like the willingness to engage and everything. I also think a lot of it is about making it fun. Politics by its nature is not the most fun thing in the world. Half of it because it's tedious, and the other half because it's stressful. But I do
Yeah.
think it's possible to make politics reasonably entertaining to engage in. And this is also something the right is much better at than the left. Because the left, in its preachiness and in its gatekeeping, has a tendency to make political engagement a process of self-flagellation, of apologizing for your perceived misgivings, of issuing corrections, of self-checking, of introspection. Now, introspection is good. We should engage in it. But we should want to engage in introspection for the process of self-betterment. It should be something we do because we
Hmm.
want to, not because the eyes are always on us. Because being pressured into like this constant, like, this is obviously a stereotype with the left to an extent, but there's always this, especially if you're like a white guy, for example, like you have to be quiet, sit still and listen. And like, don't get me wrong, it can be very good to do all of those things. You should be careful when you talk on some issues as well, privilege, blah, blah, blah. But like, for God's sake, let's have some fun with life, okay? If we hyperfixate on all the things you need to do, the checklist you have to fill out before you're allowed to engage politically, people will simply not join your side of the political aisle, especially if the right is the one that's constantly weaponizing comedy as a way of making their
Right.
points.
So important to remember. And I plan to go into academia in the future. God rest my soul.
Mhm.
And teaching politics to people is something I currently do. I'm a tutor. I do SI, all that fun stuff. So trying to make it more engaging and fun and like relevant to people, that's that's all my jam. And I do encourage more people to like enter political science just because we need more left-wing people in the field of political science. As of right now, I feel like the lone socialist, like braving the wilds against like a sock dem, a closeted socialist, like a conservative, a liberal, another liberal, and a libertarian. So, not to call out my entire poli sci department, by the way, but like, you know, it's a good discipline. Please join. I'm begging.
It is absolutely a valid discipline. I, um, it's yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. It's about the politics of self-evidency, right? The more people feel like they need to fight for what they believe in, the more they're going to fight for what they believe in, and the more people feel like their positions are
Yeah.
just this self-evident, inevitable, product of history. I think this misinterpretation of Marx's determinist political philosophy is one of the most damaging things to the left, because there are a lot of people who seem to believe that, like, because the historical processes Marx spoke of, he claimed were inevitable, therefore, like, nothing needs to be done. Like, it's going to happen, and in the meantime, you don't need to worry that much about strategy or anything like that. And it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. You actually were originally a political science major in university, right? Before switching to sociology?
You're correct.
What, just out of, I know this isn't like related to the research study interview specifically, but what specifically made you switch from uh, political science to sociology?
I didn't like how amoral the framing was with political science. I'm not.
That's fair.
I'm uninterested in a discipline which seeks to describe why people do things, and I'm very interested in disciplines which seek to describe how we can change people's behavior. Because there was this
Hmm.
tendency in the classes that I took, and I know this isn't going to be all elements of political science or whatever, but it was definitely like a pretty frequent thing where it just seemed like it was just like, I don't know, like, well, why you see this a lot with like the realists that I've been fucking talking shit about with regards
Oh God,
to
yeah.
the Ukraine situation, where it's like, well, why is Russia invading Ukraine? Well, blah 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 blah, and that's why Russia's invading. I don't care why they are, like, or at least I should say I do care why, but the why is secondary. The why is meant to inform the how do we stop them, you know? Like, understanding why things happen in the world, as far as I'm concerned, is only useful insofar as it gives us control over making good things happen in the future and preventing bad things from happening.
Right. That's
But
how I feel about political science, and it does frustrate me sometimes when I'm trying to like make an argument and I'm being told, "Hey, you need to stop narrativizing as much. It's you have a very strong narrative voice, but this is a science paper, so you know."
yeah, which is dumb, because of course there's no such. This is a humanities course. It's not an actual science. The things you're pre-selecting for in a poli-sci class are going to be biased. No matter how you try to frame it, that is always going to be the case. You can't work your way out of that. People
Hmm.
talk about this in economics as well. Like, you know, sure, we're humanities, but we're also a real science because we have, you know, hypotheses that we test for and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, but you still inform public policy, and the hypotheses that you're testing for are ones you subjectively determined to be valuable. You could find some economic
Right.
theory for maximizing GDP, which is literally empirically precise, down to the fourth decimal point every time, no matter how many factors you add. And it wouldn't change the fact that your decision that GDP is worth maximizing is a subjective one, and a pretty contentious one at that.
Yeah, I agree. There's actually like a subset of political scientists who do include things like how to address these problems when they crop up, and that's kind of where I aim to be. I want to include in this paper like a section on how other countries handle far-right radicalization, how it's being handled right now, stuff like that. I don't want to ever leave something like this open-ended. I don't want to just be like, yeah, there sure are some people moving farther right. That exists.
Well, yeah, and even then, like, you know, a normative bias can inform in a positive sense, like what you're looking for or looking to do as well. Um, maybe a person would never even think to analyze conservative radicalization without some pre-existing left-leaning bias. There's an infinite
Hmm.
amount of knowledge to obtain in the world. You know, it's not as though we can know everything. We make choices on what to focus on. We need like a good system to give us that informative bias.
Absolutely. Um, is the future of right-wing radicalization in your, like from your perspective, still going to be online after how YouTube and Twitter have been kind of cracking down on right-wing figures, and not even just right-wing figures, but like there was that whole massive purge after Trump was banned. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like the majority of his followers were just taken out in one fell swoop. It was a little bit funny.
It was. It will, but it's mostly going to be on like Facebook. It's QAnon.
Mm,
QAnon is the future of online far right radicalization, and it's going to be like boomer posting about how like Nancy Pelosi eats baby fetuses at night or whatever. Like it's all going to turn into like crazy Facebook conspiracy shit, because like that crazy conspiracy shit has always come across as kind of like innocuous enough to
mm-hmm.
avoid the same denunciation that open Nazi posting has brought about, you know? The more nonsensical your
Right.
conspiracy theories are, the less derision they'll attract, which is one of the reasons why the flat earth movement has never been taken seriously and never received much real denunciation, even though a ton of flat earthers were Nazis, and now a ton of them have moved over into QAnon, which is basically a Nazi movement.
Yeah.
So now ultimately the underlying conspiracy here was about the same. Listen to the way flat earthers talk about the world. You know, they talk about how a globalist secret, like an international conspiracy from a shady group of powerful people is seeking to dethrone God and control all of humanity through like this like propagandized media, corporate and statewide info or disinfo campaign to deny humans the blah 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 blah. If you look at the underlying like moral precepts, um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, same basic shit, right? But it's also
Yeah.
wacky that they don't. It doesn't get all the denunciation explicit Nazi posting would. So yeah, I don't know.
In my mind, I've always like separated these like all right shit posters and the Zoomers that are becoming Nazis from like the boomers on the QAnon side. I think of those as like separate groups online. Um, should I be like reframing this how I'm thinking about this? Because what I'm really concerned with is like how Gen Z is like responding to online engagement. But if it's going to continue to be like mostly boomers on Facebook, let's be honest, the boomers aren't going to last very long. Like 10 to 20 years,
I think
somewhere around there, right?
both groups see the other group as politically useful and are being used by the people with actual power. So you have people like Madison Cawthorn or Marjorie Taylor Greene who have an audience simultaneously of far right like Zoomer neo Nazis and of QAnon posters. Both of them are useful to the same group of like actually effective political agents, even though
Mm-hmm.
they might not interact with each other very much. Like I bet you most like Zoomer neo Nazis probably find the boomer QAnon posters to be like cringe and like super crazy and unhinged. And I
Right.
imagine the QAnon Facebook moms probably don't even know about the Zoomer Nazi posting. There's like this
Yeah.
mutual exclusivity there, but both of them will vote Republican, and both of them will signal boost like the big important movements, January 6th,
Right.
like the trucker movement, that kind of stuff. So it's really about like whether or not there are people with real power capable of effectively utilizing these similar but distinct political groups.
Yeah, I can completely see that. It does hurt to know that the left doesn't like rally behind our big left-wing movements and figures as much as we could. There's just like this anti-electoralism sentiment, which on one hand I get, but like on the other hand, just treat it like an honorary duty. You're doing your honorary duty to prevent crazy people from running your country.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, I've had these arguments. It'll continue to be a problem, I'm sure.
I'm sure, especially in the future. Good luck with the 2024 elections, by the way, because I know Biden said he wouldn't run again. So we're going to be seeing two primaries again.
Yeah, well, good luck with the coming midterms. Jesus, we're about to get rocked in the Senate and in the House. We'll see if we even keep the House with how bad things are looking to get. Oh, hello? Hello? I get her? Why does this keep happening? Hard enough to beat these enemies. Push to talk? Hello? Uh-huh. Well, I'm guessing that she just disconnected because she's not connected. I think she was saying goodbye. If that was her saying goodbye and then dropping, that was like a Giga Stacy move. You know? Wait, no, she rejoined.
Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Hi. I'm so sorry. My Discord fucking died on me.
No worries. I forgive you. Like we said, Discord hates me, and I guess you now as well. Um,
It hates you personally, and through transference, now it's on me.
True, it's infectious. You're also on Putin's hit squad, or hit list now, thanks to your
So,
association with me. Memes aside, though, did you have any other questions? I was probably going to only do a short stream tonight, largely because I haven't eaten, and that was a stupid move before stream.
yeah, that's fair. I heard you say I haven't eaten any solid food today, and I was like, wow, that sounds like a really bad decision. Um, I don't have anything else, but if there's anything else you'd like to add, it would be greatly appreciated.
I think I covered most of my talking points here. I don't know... Oh, Christ. Wait, really? Both? Okay. We're about to die.
The
Jesus.
boss about to kick your ass, or
Yeah, I'm just submitting to the mob here. Let it be.
fair enough.
With regards to, oh God, how am I gonna... Okay. With regards to, online far-right radicalization, I'm interested in seeing how, like, the Zoomer far-right moves forward, I guess, because it does seem like right now the QAnon group is far more politically expedient. It's
Right.
possible that we might see a different move, and that the Zoomers are actually going to be the more moderate ones on the conservative end. I could imagine that a group of conservatives who are inspired by Ben Shapiro types end up being like these
Mhm.
nerdy policy wonk conservatives who have like heckin' rational argumentarinos against trans women in bathrooms or something. Like the boomers are all these crazy QAnon posters, and then all the like TikTok conservatives are do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
They're
Political
trying to be
science
like the
research.
rational, reasonable ones. Ugh.
Yeah, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Research does show that there's like a moderation effect over time. I'm not so sure how much that's going to apply to Gen Z because whenever I talk about this with another like political scientist, they're always like, "Yeah, I knew a bunch of like socialists during the Bush years who were like engaging and volunteering and stuff," and I'm like, "Cool, but like." How socialist were they? Because I don't think you're really getting the scope of how socialist these people are. You get me?
Oh yeah,
Or like
it's
how
like when
fascist they
people,
are.
it's like when conservatives say that they used to be like super liberal or whatever, and then it's
Right.
like no you weren't. Like come on, like every single one of you says that. Like no you weren't. You vaguely thought that like being gay was okay. And now that you're like very far right in your mind, that was you being like a super liberal lefty socialist or whatever. Every single time I see a conservative say that, they have no fucking clue, like none whatsoever, what
Hmm.
what being a socialist actually is. They can't even like describe their old positions, so it's pretty fake, I'd say, pretty
It's
psyopic.
like when Carl was calling himself a classical liberal. That was hilarious. Love that.
I think he still does, or does he? Did he call himself something else now? I don't know, but yeah, no, it's
I
pretty
mean,
pretty
I
dumb.
don't think he knows anything Locke has said, so personally, I'm not too inclined to take him at his word. But I do want to let you go eat. I had some chicken nuggies earlier. As a proud Voshite, we are Legion after
I
all.
think I'm going to
Um,
join you in a couple of minutes. I,
is it cool if I give like a couple quick shout outs?
Please. I will also say that Sargon of Akkad is unironically, I mean this without a hint of hyperbole, fully sincerely, maybe one of the only people I've ever seen or encountered online who I could believe could be a neo-Nazi without knowing it. Like, I feel like Sargon could believe everything. Like, Aryan supremacy, Jewish question, like, all that, everything. And genuinely in his head
Yeah,
think that he's actually, like, a reasonable classical liberal. Um,
he does seem like the type.
and all the SJWs have just gone too far. I feel like it's remarkable. I think he has an amazing brain.
I I've never thought about it, but yeah, you're right. Holy shit. Sargon could do that. He could delude himself if he like had all these crazy conspiracy theories and still think, yeah, I'm a classical liberal or, whatever his stupid Britbonger accent sounds like. I'm sorry, the Anglophobia is acting up.
Another Vashite tendency. I think it's just because usually when other like conservative people lie about their ideology, like Fuentes or whatever, for political expediency, like it's usually evident that they're doing it, or it's like with a wink and a nudge. But like I've heard Carl defend adamantly the
Right.
idea, like he seems to actually get angry when it's questioned, like his liberal values or whatever. So I don't know, man. Maybe he's deep in the sauce. I don't know.
Fair enough.
But yeah, anyway,
Uh,
yeah, hit me up.
I wanted to ask you really quickly, by the way,
Hmm?
who's your favorite Game of Thrones character? Before, like, I give my Discord and stuff, because I do want chat to, like, DM me if they have anything that they want to share or, like, anything that could help me with the project, especially if they have any stories about de-radicalization. But, like, who's your favorite Game of Thrones character?
I don't really have strong opinions on Game of Thrones specifically. I mean, Oberyn
Tragic.
Martell was really cool. I liked him while
Based.
while he was around. I like the Hound a lot. Tyrion
Yeah.
obviously is like a fan
Yeah.
favorite for a reason because he's like so darn likable. Um, yeah, I think those would probably be my three. Oh, Brienne as well.
God, yes.
I really liked her. For me,
Brienne.
the highlight of the show by far was Brienne and the Hound fighting.
That was so good. That was so good. I love that fight. But chat can totally judge me for this, but my favorite character is Peter Baelish, and I will not retract that statement.
You'll
That's
have to
that's
remind
on the
me.
record.
Peter
That's
Baelish.
Littlefinger, sorry.
Oh, Littlefinger. Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Cause you're a bad person.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a horrible person.
Um, Yeah, I remember him being cool for like the first couple of seasons. It felt like he got less relevant as time went on. I don't
To
really
be
know.
fair, it's because the writers didn't know how to write him, so they wrote him out and then killed him.
The
But I
writers made a few
digress.
mistakes. I never watched
A
past the
handful.
fourth season, so I only like heard of the bad
You've
stuff. I
been
haven't seen it
spared.
myself.
Thank God. Don't ever think that you've ever missed anything. You didn't, except for Jorah confessing his love for Danny. That one, show Jorah only, not book Jorah. Book Jorah, we condemn. We disown. We we disown. Um, we disavow. Sorry.
Take your
Uh,
word for it.
So my Discord is Charlotte the Ghost. I'm on your Discord server. I would like it if people could DM me their stories, if they have anything they want to like reach out to in relation to this project, that would be great. If you just want to say hi too, you guys are welcome. I love chat. You guys have been wonderful. My friends have been sending me what you guys have been saying throughout the conversation, and it's really put a smile on my face. Um,
I'd like to
I
believe that my chat
also,
generally offers people a friendly reception.
oh, absolutely. We have a great community. I'd also like to give a shout out to I don't want to be like linked to my online identity because I am using my actual name and university in this study. So if anybody ever found it, all that good stuff. I don't want to be like uh, kicked out of school for saying socialism's cool.
They might know you like
Um,
me. Yeah, it'd be very damaging to your career.
I don't think that'll get me kicked out or discounted from any like graduate programs, though. I want to give a shout out
We'll
to
see.
my friend's Twitter. It's at Piper Pie underscore. She posts the dumbest shit ever, and it's very funny. Please blow her up. I love her. She's a trans girl who is also like probably the first real cat girl. I made her profile picture. She's a very sweet person. And I have baby pictures for you. Would you like to see some very good baby pictures?
Yeah, hit me up with you.
Her name's Andromeda. She's spoiled and mean, but I love her.
My cats are spoiled and also very friendly. Ooh. I can see why you named her Andromeda. There's so many colors.
Isn't she gorgeous? I'm
She's got
so
so
glad
much
that,
shit going on. Oh my god, it's like a fucking furry
right?
OC. There are so many highlights. We love
I'm
them.
glad I get to share my baby with the world. All right. You
Ooh.
take care. Have a good nuggy dinner. Thank you for chatting with me.
Always. Have a wonderful night.
You as well.